How's everybody doing today? Last time in a previous session, we talked about the importance of creating a parenting plan. And once again, it's a blueprint for your child's future. So you want to think through all of these issues. But there are other advantages to it. I mean, you want to be intimately involved in their lives, you want to be the best parent you can be, but it's also going to help you in court, demonstrating that you've thought through all these issues. It could put your ex on the defensive if they haven't thought through these issues. So that's a good reason to do it. But most importantly, it's really for the benefit of your children. You're thinking through how you want them raised, where you want them raised, what kind of religion they're going to be part of, every detail about their life. And if you put it in a document here, you're less likely to fight about it later on. So there's going to be a lot of information to be included in a parenting plan, and maybe not all of it is relevant to your particular situation. There also may be topics that are unique to your situation that I don't cover. Unlikely, but possible. If that's the case, you'll just have to add those. But this is a good starting point for developing your own customized parenting plan. Now, as usual, in the resource section, I've included a blank parenting plan, questionnaire, and I've also included a sample parenting plan, which is considered an excellent one. So go through those in conjunction. You don't have to write these questions down now. Everything will be in the resource section. Now, this is probably the most important document you're going to complete in the course of the divorce. So I want you to give it the time, the thought, and the energy necessary to do a good job. You won't get through it all in one sitting, and that's fine, because you're probably going to see things in there that, quite frankly, you never thought about. You have no idea. So you're going to have to start formulating a plan. So let's get started. The first thing that needs to go into it is your legal information, such as your case number, who's the petitioner, who's the respondent. You need to include information about the children, what are their birthdays, what are their names, etc. The more detailed and precise, the better, because once again, a well-crafted parenting plan and custody agreement, it's going to help you alleviate potentially contentious issues and restore routine and a sense of security to your child. So you want to go through this carefully. So once you get the legal information in there, the information about the children, you want to put a date in. When does it start? When does it end? It usually terminates when the child reaches the age of majority, which is 18. It could terminate whenever you want. You could do it after college. Most of the stuff, I'm giving you this information for you to think about. You're going to be the one making the decisions. I will make recommendations wherever I've got a lot of experience on this. So I'll give you recommendations that I think in general work best, but at the end of the day, it's going to be your call. So as we also discussed in another section, custody, legal versus sole, joint, legal, that's too funny. Sole versus joint, and legal versus physical. So you need to put this in there, and maybe you haven't agreed upon it yet. So always, the way the courts work nowadays, you want to have everything joint. You want to have joint legal, and once again, legal is who makes the decisions for the child, and physical is where the child is. Now for legal, I went over the advantages and disadvantages in another section, but if there's a high level of conflict, joint legal can be difficult because neither one of you has more of a say in it than the other. So if you can't agree, this can cause problems. But once again, it's for your child's benefit, so you want to try to agree. You want to try to get all this stuff in there. Okay, once you finish the joint physical, joint legal, the biggest part of the parenting plan is the actual schedule. Where is the child when? And once again, you need to come up with your timeshare. And that's difficult enough. But even if you get it down that, well, he's going to be with mom on Mondays, Tuesdays, dad on Wednesday, Thursday, and we split weekends, it's not that simple because there are going to be a lot of other contingencies you need to deal with. The first one is 3-day weekends. If it's dad's weekend and the child should be with mom on Monday, but it's a holiday weekend, who gets the child? Now, whenever Monday's a holiday, I strongly recommend just give it to the parent who has them over the weekend. This will create longer weekends for them. It's better for everybody. Once again, it's your call, but 3-day weekends, it should go with who's ever had them over the weekend or that Monday. Vacations. How many weeks vacation do you each want to get over the course of the summer? Now, depending on the school, most summers are between 10 and 13 weeks, so there's plenty of time for both of you. I recommend a minimum of 3 weeks vacation for each parent. Now, how they take it, I would be specific about, namely, are you going to be okay if they take a block of all 3 weeks at the same time and you don't see your children for 3 weeks? So I don't recommend doing that. Also, I would specify how much time they can take. For example, does 3 weeks mean 21 days? Okay, can I take Saturday, Sunday for 8 weeks in a row? You don't want them doing that. So what I would recommend doing is saying 3 weeks, 2 can be contiguous, 1 probably shouldn't be, and you have to take 1 week blocks at a time. Once again, your call, think about it, but that's what tends to work best. If you want to do 4 weeks or even 5 weeks, that's fine. But just make sure you specify the increments that they should be taken in. When do you notify each other about the vacation? What I found is sometime in May works best, and you should alternate years. For example, mother has even years, father has odd years. In even years, mother shall tell father which 3 weeks she wants to take by May 1st, and father should tell mother which 3 weeks he wants to take by May 15th. Something like that, but be very specific because, once again, we always want to avoid conflict later on. And May is a good time because it gives you enough time to still plan a good vacation, but not so far out that it's like, well, I have no idea what I'm going to be doing this summer. So it's kind of I find a good midway point. And talk about holidays. For example, 4th of July. If 4th of July is mom's this year and dad wants to take a week that happens to be over the first week of July, which takes preference, holidays or vacation? Once again, you can go either way on that. I recommend you leave the vacation days alone so you don't get into it over that. And, 4th of July, Labor Day, Memorial Day are only the big holidays over the summer. But either way, whatever you want, just make sure you clarify it. Make sure you specify who gets to call which year and when they have to let the other parent know by. Next, when they're on vacation with the other parent, they should always have access to the child, phone calls to say goodnight or whatever. So it's a good idea to include a basic itinerary for the vacation, before they leave, at least 1 week, whatever works for you. Make sure they know where they are, what the dates are, telephone numbers for emergencies. This way, if there's a change of plans, you should tell the other person, of course, but at least they have a basic idea where they are. Now, nowadays, most kids end up having cell phones, not the very young ones, so it's usually not as big of an issue, but just make sure you keep the other parent informed about where the children are over the course of the vacation, and you're not depriving them of the ability to speak with them. Next, what else about vacation do you want to specify? Will they be allowed to take the child out of the country? If they do, usually they need to sign a notarized form to do it. I mean, certainly for Mexico and Canada, if you're driving over the border, you would expect to have that. But even for other countries, that could be an issue. So make sure you specify it, and then make sure the two of you comply with it. If you know they're leaving in 2 weeks and they need that document, make sure you're available to go to a notary or have it notarized and get it to them. Now, next topic is special days. Do you want to give each other maybe a couple of extra days a year for the heck of it? Maybe it's your birthday, maybe something's going on that's important to you but not your spouse. Good idea to have special days in there. And they're just an exception to the regular schedule, but not a holiday. Now, in such cases, the parent, if you want to change the usual schedule, hopefully you should give them at least a couple of days' notice, and preferably in writing. I would specify that special days cannot take out the holidays. So, for example, if 4th of July is on a Monday, it's your weekend, the weekend before, you taking a special day on that day. And we already touched on this briefly, but holidays should supersede other stuff, and special days should not supersede holidays. Now, if the both of you agree to it, fine. But once again, who has the authority to say yes or no? Make sure you have written notice, specify everything. And now this brings us to, just in general, pickups and drop-offs. Where are they? When do they occur? This is a typical thing, but let's assume all of your pickup and drop-offs are through school. But then Christmas vacation comes along. Who does what where? Make sure you specify this information. Transportation, along with that, is who's taking the kids to whose house, or are you having a neutral place to meet? Is dad always taking them to mom's house? Is mom taking them to dad's? Is whoever dropping it off doing it? So make sure you specify it. And also be clear about what else is happening there. For example, say dad has the kids every Wednesday until 6 p.m. Is dad feeding them, and is dad doing the homework? Make sure you specify that in the parenting plan. So who's responsible for the homework? Who's responsible for feeding them on days when there's a pickup or drop off involved? That, usually in an early time. And in general, it's great if parents alternate pickups and drop offs. So if one person's always doing it, that could become a problem over time. Now, what happens if the child is sick at the time of transportation? Child is with dad, should dad keep the child for the night? And if the child is sick the next day, what happens? So you have to have a whole special section just on how do you handle illness? Does the child stay with the parent it was with when he got ill? And if the child needs not to go to school the following day, who's responsible? Related to that, if the child is in school and the child gets sick, who's going to get the call? Who do you want the school to call? Do you stick to your schedule, whose day it is? Is someone more designated? And once again, whatever you want is fine as long as you put it in there. So, okay, the big holidays, I'll call it winter break, and Thanksgiving. How do you want to split that up? Now, Thanksgiving, a lot of schools, the kids are out for the entire week. If that's the case, you could have the weekend before and up to you could just divide it on Thanksgiving Day. One parent has it till 4, the other parent picks them up at 4, so you both have the ability to be with the child on Thanksgiving. Or you can alternate years, however you want to do it. Or you can split the week in 2. Once again, just make sure you specify. Some people just do up until Tuesday is regular schedule, and from Friday on is regular schedule, and just Wednesday and Thursday are special schedule, and there you alternate. So, however you want to do that. I'll call it Christmas break. This is complicated because everybody wants to be with the kids on Christmas. And there are 2 big ways to do it. You can have, the Christmas break or the holiday break doesn't always break up evenly. Usually kids are out of school, say, for 2 weeks. You could have one parent gets week 1 and one parent gets week 2, but they may not have any of the Christmas break at that, or the actual Christmas day. You could have one parent always gets Christmas Eve, the other parent always gets Christmas Day. You could have one is the first half of the vacation up until Christmas Day at 10, the other is the second half of Christmas Day. Once again, whatever you like, but that's a complicated one, and because once again, Christmas doesn't really usually fall in the middle of that 2-week break, so you need to think through that. I've done it both ways, and both ways cause difficulties, so as always, be as specific as possible to avoid contentious activity later on, because if you don't specify it, someone's going to get upset, and you don't want to end up back in court over this. Next, you want to talk about right of refusal. If the parent can't be with the child for some reason, do you, as the other parent, do you want first right of refusal, that they should ask you first? Or is it okay if it's their time, they can ask anyone they want? Make sure you specify that. After school care, who's picking up the child? Who's authorized to pick up the child? A lot of times, on file at the school, you should have a list. If dad or mom can't pick them up, brother can do it, sister, aunt, uncle. But you should think of that. Who's your backup when you can't do it and your ex can't do it either? Okay, education. And once again, this goes back to legal custody. If one parent has sole legal custody, it's their call. But if it's joint legal custody, then you both get to decide. So just make sure you specify that one way or another. You should probably specify right now what the recommended school is, and what other schools for the future are. So if the child's in grammar school, you even want to start thinking forward to high school, for example. Parent-teacher conferences, does one go, do both go? You alternate, make sure you specify. Access to school records. Do both parents have access? Does one parent make sure that, because usually one parent ends up registering the child, and usually it's better if they make sure that both of you have access. But once again, it's up to however you want to do it and how responsible you are. If the child is sick or needs to leave for some other reason, written consent should be provided. And you should tell the other parent beforehand in writing that on Tuesday at 3 o'clock or whatever, I'm going to take Johnny to a baseball game, so he's going to miss the last class in school. So once again, just make sure both parents are on the forms and whatever you agree on. Enrichment and extracurricular activities. Once again, if it's sole legal, it's their call. Usually that's not the case, but you just need to specify who has responsibility for the child on a particular day to participate in activities like a field trip. Or let's talk about after-school activities. Say dad has every Wednesday from school pickup to school drop-off on Thursday morning. What if you have ballet lessons and you need to take him to ballet lessons? Or are you even allowed to schedule ballet lessons on dad's day? So once again, you need to think through this. Who has the right to do it? You should always talk about everything before and decide on it. Now, of course, once again, if there's a high level of contention, this can be really, really difficult. But if we put this here in the parenting plan, the contingencies, who gets to decide what, when, it's really going to help you a lot. That should include, sleepovers, especially over the summer. Can you go to his friend's house in Montana for a week? So parents should always consult on that, but whatever the two of you decide, excuse me, as long as it's in the parenting agreement, that's fine. Religious training. You should specify that. Once again, as long as it's joint legal, the two of you have a say in the matter, specify it, make sure you get it in the parenting plan. Healthcare, and that includes dental and vision. Who's paying for it? Who's taking them? Is dad paying for all the medical care? Is dad paying for the routine medical care? What if there's an emergency? Can either parent take them to emergency room? What if, mom wants Susie to get braces and dad doesn't? Who's paying for that? So once again, think through that. One way to do it is you split. The dad takes care of all medical, mom takes care of all dental. If they're both working, that's a great way to do it. If not, dad takes care of all routine mental and dental, mom takes care of any emergency if she brings them. That's another way to think about it. Who are your healthcare providers, doctors? You should have names, addresses, phone numbers. Both parents should be on that. Both should have access to all their records. Both should have permission from the other to take the child for emergency care or just anything out of the ordinary. Child needs any medication, put that in the parenting plan if possible, and any other details in case of emergency other than the two of you. Who else should be notified? Who's the mother's contact and their phone number? Who's the father's? And obviously you can have multiple people in both. Mental health care, same thing. If after a while you decide, wow, this divorce is really tough on the child, we think they should, be getting some looked at by a psychologist. Who's bringing them? Who's paying? And who's deciding on who to pick? So, who maintains the insurance for medical, dental, mental health, vision? All of that should be specified. Next is financial support. And this can include spousal support. I mean, it shouldn't include spousal support, but it should include child support. And other things you may want to put in there, like college. If you're starting to save for college now, can you specify that? It's great if you can get that in there. Dad's going to put away, $500 a month until Johnny reaches college age. Mom's going to put away $50 a month, whatever. But try to get that in there as well. Because later on, you don't want to deal with who's paying for the child's education. And that includes high school as well, because obviously that can be expensive if it's a private school. Deductions. Who gets the deduction? Normally it goes by who the custodial parent is, but it boils down to however you want to do it. The two of you can split it. If you have more than one child, this is great. Dad can take one, mom can take one, so you can both end up reporting head of household. Nice way to do it. Extracurricular activities. If mom wants Susie to go to ballet lessons, does dad have to pay for it? And dad wants Johnny to take hockey lessons. Just specify who pays for it. Is it the person who picked the activity? Are you splitting it 50-50? However you want to do it. Assuring future support. Insurance. Do you want to have insurance on either one of the parents or the child in case something goes wrong? If so, how much? Who's paying for it? Who's the beneficiary? Make sure you include all of that. Here's one that parents fight over all the time is clothing. Johnny came home from school wearing this, and Johnny's mom picks him up every day. Well, guess what? All of Johnny's clothes end up at mom's house. So you both should be responsible for maintaining adequate clothing and accessories. The understanding, as long as it fits, clothing should be used in both households. It shouldn't be this is mom's pair of pants and dad's shirt. Everything should go back and forth. Everything should really, ideally, you should both be buying clothes for the child. Whatever you agree on. Some people are very territorial about that. It's like, no, I bought all these Tommy Bahama shirts and they stay at my house. So make sure you get that in there, because this can be a real area of contention. And then bigger things like, jackets, tennis shoes, boots. Maybe you don't have duplicates in both houses. How do they go back and forth? Obviously they should move with the child, but is it a problem? If Johnny's not using the tennis shoes, he needed them on Monday. If he's not using them, should he be bringing them back on Tuesday or whatever? Think through that. Surname. Occasionally the parents get divorced and one wants to change the surname. Is that okay? I would specify in the parenting plan whatever the surname is, make sure it's in there, and it should probably stay that. The court hates to see you uprooting the children in any way. They want to maintain consistency in their lives. So if you're the one who wants to change their name, you're the one who wants to change their school, you're the one who wants to move out of state, in general, they're not going to like that. So maintain consistency in your child's life. Now, if you have sole joint and sole physical custody, yeah, you have more power. But if you're the one who's going to be, I want to move 50 miles away, and you're going to need all new friends and all new schools, the court may very well disagree with you on that, and they could change custody, like legal and physical custody. They could say, we're going to give it to dad now because you're trying to uproot the child. So in general, try to keep their lives as consistent as possible. If you want the child to maintain contact with the extended family, grandma, grandpa, the uncles, the aunts, it's a good idea to put them in there. Put in a section, anyone you encourage the child to stay in touch with or to be in touch with. It could be friends, it could be family, it could be anything. Next is communication between parent and child. Do you allow the other parent to say goodnight, have a phone call once a day, or whatever? You should specify it, and you should allow it. Now, the other parent shouldn't necessarily be allowed to call anytime they want. But, to say goodnight every night at between 8 and 9 o'clock, something like that, especially if they're younger children and they don't have their own cell phones, good idea to put that in there. And the parents should encourage the child to want to stay in communication with the other parent. They should have their privacy when they have the phone calls. They shouldn't have to feel awkward about it or embarrassed. So you want to facilitate comfortable communication between the child and the other parent. So you want it to be minimally disruptive. So put it in there. It's okay between the following hours, blah, blah, blah. If they can't talk to the person, we were busy at that, then they should be responsible for the parent saying, you know what, okay, you couldn't talk to your mom at 8 o'clock. How about tomorrow at 5 o'clock? So once again, it's your job as the other parent to facilitate communication and make sure all that continues running smoothly. And specify. You can talk to the child as early as 8, but no later than 9, except for emergencies. Good idea to have that in there. Okay, communication between parents. Now, how contentious is everything? Initially, usually it gets pretty ugly. So, can you be civil and talk in person? Can you be civil and talk on the phone? Does it need to be by email or by logbook or by text or by FaceTime or by Instagram or whatever? But specify it. Think of your ex or soon-to-be ex as a business partner. Okay, you don't have to love them, but you do have to be civil with them, especially when it comes to communicating about the child, no matter how much you hate them. So make sure you specify what's the best way to do it. And think through this, because, yeah, we used to talk in person. We really can't do that anymore. If one parent has sole legal custody, even if it's all their decision, they should keep the other parent informed, like, if they're changing schools or anything big in their lives, and they should probably do it in writing. So make sure you put that in there. Anytime there's a major change in their life, I will let the other person know within 48 hours via email, something to that effect. Each parent should provide advance notification to the other parent for medical care, obviously with the exception of, illness. But if the child does get sick and have to go to the hospital, you should let them know within, 4 hours or immediately. Specify what happens in emergency situations. We'll talk later on about parent alienation, but let me just say this up here. Each parent should promote respect for the other parent by not talking in a demeaning way about the other parent in front of the child or within earshot of the child. It usually doesn't work well. Okay, you're hurting the child when you do that, and they're going to resent you. You have to understand the child is half of each parent. So you talk bad about the other parent, it's going to come back and haunt you, and it's going to hurt them in the long run. So you don't want to do that. You should probably assist the child in remembering, like, the other parent's birthday or any special occasions. Or if the other parent's ill, say, hey, why don't you call your mom? She's not feeling well. Good idea to facilitate communication like that. Both parents should agree to never put the child in the middle. So don't tell your dad this or tell your mom this. Now, some people use a logbook. Depending on the child, the age, you could. I don't recommend it, because at some point they're going to go through there, and if it's just truly generic logistic stuff, that's fine. But if there's anything contentious in there, or that you just don't want the child to know, even if it's not contentious, so I'd be careful about a logbook. But figure out how the parents are going to communicate, specify it, keep the kid out of it. Parents should ask the other parent for permission if they're going to schedule an event during the other parent's custodial time. So once again, if ballet lessons are only on Wednesday night and Wednesday night's dad's day, you need to discuss that beforehand. And once again, my overall assumption here is you're going to have joint legal custody and probably joint physical custody, but even if it's sole, you still want to talk about things like that, or maybe it's sole legal but joint physical, or vice versa. Now, each parent should provide the other parent promptly with all communications and information regarding healthcare providers, report cards, lunch orders, menus, order forms for school pictures, invitations to special events, including birthday parties, school events, or any activity that falls on the other parent's time. Notice of other activities involving the child, the results of all standardized tests or diagnostic tests or evaluations, progress reports, or anything of that nature. Now, agreements should be written in business style and a copy should be sent to the other parent. Once again, this is a business partner, be professional. It'll work much better for both of you. Wherever possible, the parent should try to harmonize the child's routines and schedules from house to house. Each parent should let the other parent know about bedtimes, nap times, and other routines. Because if one parent has the kid going to bed at 8 and the other one at 10, sometimes that's a problem. So wherever possible, if you can agree on that up front, try to get it in writing. It's really going to help. And, and the kids have special projects and things like that, sample of schoolwork. It should be shared by both parents. Remember, we don't own the children. We want to do what's best for them. We want to share. Next is a fairly touchy subject, which is corporal punishment. Most parents don't employ it nowadays, but you should specify that if there's no corporal punishment, or if there is allowed, specify that, exactly what is allowed, because this can get really heated if you're not on the same page with this. Parenting classes. It's a good idea for both parents to take some sort of parenting class, some kind of skill building, parental education. And if you do, let the other parent know, recommend it even. And if you complete it, both parents should be provided, proof of completion should be provided to the other parent. Okay, here's a tough one. What happens when one parent wants to move? Now, once again, we already talked a bit about this. It depends if it's sole legal custody or joint legal custody, but you want to be very clear on this. And in general, you don't want the other parent moving away. It's not good for the child, it's not good for either parent, and the court's probably going to frown on it unless you've got a very good reason. The example I used earlier, I'll say it one more time. If mom has sole physical custody, and she decides to move cross-country and depriving dad of the child, the court may actually step in and say, nope, now dad has sole legal custody and sole physical custody. So be careful with things like that. And in general, I said it before, the court doesn't want to upset the routine of the child. So whichever parent, regardless of what the legal status is trying to make these big changes, it may not go too well in court. Obviously, for small moves, if they want to move within 10 miles or something, just specify, yes, they can, no, they can't, or 20 miles or whatever it is. How much notice they have to provide for things like that. Now, if it is joint legal, both parents should probably sign off on things like if there's a change in the healthcare provider, if there's major non-emergency surgery or participation in dangerous activities, certainly change of a surname, hopefully that's not going to happen, issuance of a work permit, signing up for a driver's permit, a driver's license, enlistment in the armed forces, maybe not so much because at that point hopefully they're of age. Safety issues, are there any issues with safety when the child is with one parent or the other? The big ones, alcohol and drugs. Clearly, it should be in there, the parent should not be using alcohol or recreational drugs for at least 8 hours before responsibility when the child is in their care. Better you don't drink at all ever around the kids or using recreational drugs. If you have firearms, make sure they're locked away and off premises, but specify that, so they know, yes, we have a gun, but it's locked away, it's not there, it's not a problem. Okay, we already mentioned travel and passports, but now let's get a little more specific. Assuming you're both okay that the child can travel overseas with the other parent during the summer for a week. Who has the passport? Who holds on to the passport? How does this work? Is the other parent allowed to leave the state with the child without written approval? Make sure you specify that. Child's passport should be available to both parents regardless of which one holds it, but you should clarify who's holding it. Describe any circumstances where the child may be allowed to leave the country with the other parent. Now we're getting near the end of the section. Okay, we got our beautiful parenting plan written. We think it's as clear as possible. We've agreed on everything. Everything's working fine for 2.5 years. All of a sudden, one parent stops complying with certain things. What happens? What are you going to do to remedy the situation? Now, if the parent who violates the terms of the agreement, are you agreeing they can be taken back to court? Are you agreeing that the violating parent shall, if that happens, pay the non-violating parent's attorney's fees? You want to clarify this, and I've said this before, but once again, we want to keep reinforcing this stuff. Once you're divorced, if you want to go back because the two of you can't agree, usually it annoys the judge because it just demonstrates that the two of you can't play nicely together, and probably you're both going to be admonished or get a little slap on the wrist. So in general, you don't want to keep going back to court for stupid stuff, especially when it's fresh, but hopefully you'll never have to go back. There are certain things where if a parent's schedule changes tremendously, they got fired from their job, they want to change support. If alcohol or violence, any of that becomes an issue, you may have to go back. But in general, if you're afraid for yourself or your child, you should seek help before just going back to court. Talk to a professional. So you want to make sure you know what's the best direction to go, and you do it logically, not emotionally. Now, keep in mind that the parenting plan does not change the existing court safety orders. They remain in effect. The parenting plan should agree with that. If the two of you decide to change the parenting plan, that's called a stipulated order, and you should file it with the court so the court can enforce it. But you can change it without going back to court, as long as the two of you agree. But if you do, I highly recommend going back to court, just to file it. You don't have to go. A lot of information there. So once again, go through the sample parenting plan, go through the questionnaire. If you have any questions, you're always welcome to email me, joe@platinummethodcoaching.com. I look forward to helping you. If you have any questions, this is complicated, it's emotionally charged stuff. I know it's tough, I've been through it twice, but I'm happy to help you in any way possible. So Joe Pastore with Platinum Method Coaching. Make it a great day.